Well, hello everybody and welcome to our session today. My name is Cass Crocker and I am the Project Officer for Magnificent Meadows, Cymru. And it's so lovely to see so many people here today. How many have we got? So 93 at the moment, and no doubt a couple more will pour in. But I'm really optimistic it's an indicator that waxcaps are getting more attention now, and terms like ballerina, pink ballerina and purple earth tongue will start to be terms that people are more familiar with. This is one of a part of a series taking place across October. It's the Fall into Nature series. And there are lots of other fabulous talks that you can attend. For instance, Grassland and Climate Change, Road Verge Campaign, Classes for Grasses, for people who want to find out more about IDing, and Right Tree and Right Place. And throughout today's session, I'll send links through the chat feature to make sure you know what else is going on. Today, we are blessed with three captivating speakers. You won't be disappointed. First up will be Kaylee. And Kaylee is Plant Life's community scientist, and she works on a National Lottery Heritage funded project called Rare Plants and Wild Connections. And she's based up in the Cairngorms National Park. So welcome to Kaylee. Then we have Lucia, and she is Project Officer for Magnificent Meadows, Cymru. And she concentrates on meadow conservation in large scale farm settings, also with the National Trust and urban hospital grounds. And we have a very special guest speaker with us today, Bruce, who's Head of Interpretation at National Botanical Gardens of Wales. And he promotes pastures of international importance for waxcap fungi at the Botanical Gardens at Warnlass National Nature Reserve. So before I hand over to our fabulous speakers, a couple of housekeeping matters. Obviously, we've got the chat feature. Please use that, and I'll be using it too to just share links from the speakers and to kind of get chats going. But if you have a particular question for the panelist, please use the Q&A feature, especially if you think it's a question that will have resonance for other people attending today. And then we'll open that up to the panelists at the end of the session. So we'll have three speakers, we'll sort of go through those. And then at the end, hopefully we'll have 10, 15 minutes to then sort of ask the panelists those brilliant questions that you have for them. That's enough from me. Enjoy the session, and I'll hand you over to Kaylee. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So thank you for joining us today. My name's Kaylee. I thought we would start with why you are hearing from both Scotland and Wales today. And this is because the UK is one of Europe's principal strongholds for waxcaps. And in fact, over half of the UK's most important waxcap grasslands can be found here in Scotland and Wales. So this autumn, we've come together to paint a picture with your help of the status of waxcaps right across Britain. So here in Scotland in particular, the plant life project that I work on, called the Cairngorms Rare Plants and Wild Connections project, is working to save and support some of our rarest wild plant populations. And this spans across Caledonian pine woods, iconic mountaintops, and of course, our species-rich grasslands. We're a National Lottery Heritage funded project running until March 2024. And in that time, we'll be helping to deliver something called the Cairngorms Nature Action Plan, which has highlighted waxcaps that we'll be talking about today as a priority species for conservation. So over the coming years, we'll be working with everyone from land managers to local communities to organisations and actual visitors to the national park, empowering those people to take action and in turn help us protect the waxcap grasslands of the Cairngorms. So why do we and other projects like our Magnificent Meadows project have such an interest in waxcaps? Well, waxcaps are in fact a really valuable indicator species. So not only are they absolutely striking to look at, as you can see from this image here, but they can tell us an awful lot about the areas in which they grow. Because they're preferential to soils that are poor in nutrients and undisturbed, these tend to be grasslands that haven't been agriculturally improved. So those that have been left unfertilized without ploughing or development. And because of this, waxcaps are able to act as a really bright, colorful indicator of where some of our most ancient grasslands are. So let's take a closer look at these characterful fungi. So waxcaps themselves are a familiar shaped fungi that are often brightly coloured with a waxy or slippery looking cap, originally classed as a genus called Hydrocybe. Some species have recently been moved to more closely related groups following genetic studies, but to keep things simple for now, we'll continue to refer to these as Hydrocybe. There are, however, other fungi that can be found alongside these waxcaps, which we bundle together in a group to call Waxcap grassland assemblage. And these extend to wonderfully named fungi like earth tongues, coral, club, and pink gills, all of which also prefer this undisturbed, unimproved grassland habitat. So let's take a look at some of these fungi that you might find in some of the grassy areas near you across the country this autumn. So starting with those Hydrocybe genus, there are many different types of waxcaps, but I would like to show you a few that are maybe more common, which are more likely to come across. These are the meadow waxcap, blackening waxcap, which we've been lucky enough to already have quite a few records come through for this autumn, scarlet waxcap, pink ballerina waxcap, and golden waxcap, just to name a few. So as you can tell, they're quite appropriately named, mostly by their colour or a key feature. The blackening waxcap, for example, turns black where it's been touched or damaged. So as you can see in the image here, the tip of the cap has started to turn, while the pink ballerina has a beautiful cap that turns upwards and splits with age to look like a ballerina's dress. So next we have our accompanying waxcap grassland fungi, starting with the weird and wonderfully named earth tongues. This is a small group of mushrooms with around 12 grassland species recorded in the UK. And as the name suggests, they take the form of a tongue or club shape and are typically brown to black in colour. And although relatively flat in shape, most earth tongues have this kind of distinctive groove down the middle. And these tend to appear slightly later in the fungi fruiting season. Next, we have some of my personal favorites, a few examples of coral, club, or spindle fungi. These are all common names for fungi which grow upright in finger-like or branched forms, much like underwater coral. We know of around 20 of these grassland species in the UK. Typically orange or yellow, these fungi can range from being pale grey or white to bright bold purple. And the violet coral that we have photographed here is a particularly spectacular sight to come across and is one of the rarest waxcap grassland species you might find. And coming back to our toadstool-shaped species, pink gills are another that you'll find amongst waxcap grasslands. These are much more dully coloured than the waxcaps, but do range from having pale pinkish to brown and grey caps, with a few species showing bluish or purple tinges. And as their name suggests, they have a pinkish gill underneath, which is caused by pink spores that saturate the colour of the gills as the fungus matures. These are also not slippery or slimy in texture, so can be a little bit more deceiving, but are certainly worth keeping a lookout for, particularly if there are other waxcap grassland fungi present in an area. And though some of the more common waxcap species can be found here in the Cairngorms, there are a few particular specialities to the area, so much so that we have few photographs of them. So I apologise for only having the one image for this slide. Most of these are montane waxcaps. You can understand why they would enjoy the vast mountainous terrain of the Cairngorms. These include alpine, arched, and lilac waxcaps. And the lilac waxcap, which we're lucky enough to have photographed here, is typically found amongst heather and Arctic alpine plants such as crowberry, which you'll often come across in the national park. So we would love to hear if you think you've come across any of these rare specialities. So where to then you think of fungi, a possible waxcap that you're looking to identify this autumn? So although colour is one of the simplest identifiers for waxcap, remember to check the colour of the cap, the stem, the gills. All of these are really important. Yellow and red coloured waxcaps can be particularly tricky to identify, with colours often fading if there's been heavy rainfall. So it's worth taking into account some of the other factors too that'll help pinpoint that identification, particularly if you're using an identification key. So with shape, consider what is the diameter of the cap? Is it conical, so pointed, domed, rounded, convex, or flattened? Think about how old the specimen might be as well, because wax caps can change quite significantly in shape over time, often becoming more open. The gills of the fungi may be described as narrowly or barely attached to the stem, broadly attached or decurrent, where the gills are fluted down the stem. And you should also check both the cap and the stem in dry weather just to determine its texture, because sometimes wet weather can be very deceptive and make all fungi look slippery and shiny when they're not really. And lastly, a top tip is to try gently warming a portion of the specimen in your hands or placing it in a closed container. And although a few species have a distinct smell, doing this can help bring out any of those smells and can be a really important clue. So you might not need to even travel too far to find wax caps. Because they like undisturbed grassland areas, you may well find them on a road verge near you, in a country house walk when you're next out, in a nearby churchyard. So it's really worth keeping your eyes peeled for those bright colours around about. A few key themes to these areas, which we believe wax caps are preferential to, include a short sward in the autumn and plenty of moss coverage like we've got in this photo here. So if you're in an area that you think has potential for wax caps, but you haven't seen any yet, don't be afraid to come back later in the year because you might be able to see them kind of early winter time for another look before those frosts come in. Now, sadly, the habitats in which wax caps and waxcap grassland fungi grow are in decline, and this is mostly due to modern and intensive farming techniques and development. And because fungi take in all of their nutrients in from the soil, they're extremely sensitive to any changes happening in their environment, such as the introduction of fertilizers, ploughing, or overgrazing, where the ground becomes compacted. So with these species becoming rarer and rarer, we need to find out where these remaining waxcap grasslands are in order to help protect them. So before I hand you over to Lucia, who's going to talk about how you can help us discover more about where these rare grasslands are, I thought we could do a quick quiz to help set the scene for our waxcap watch. Very quick, I have 2 questions and 2 identification challenges with multiple choice answers. So if you would like to have a go, please pop your answers in the Zoom chat if you'd like, and we'll keep an eye on them as we run through. So first off, we spoke about the different types of grassland fungi earlier and how many different species of waxcap there might be. So how many do you think can be found in the UK? And these are the colourful, waxy, slippery looking toadstool shaped fungi that fall under that Hydrocybe genus group. I'll give you a few seconds to have a think. And the answer is that around 50 different types of wax caps occur here, and they're the most commonly occurring type of grassland fungi that you'll find. So question number 2, can wax caps grow on woody material? So what do you think? Yes or no? Give you a few seconds. So the answer is, in fact, no. Wax caps can only grow in the soil, so won't ever be found on dead wood like the top image we have here. The first image is, in fact, a jelly fungi called yellow stag's horn. So it does have quite similar characteristics to the meadow coral photographed below, but the easiest way to tell them apart is by their location. So if you're struggling with an ID, have a look around, and if it isn't in a grassland area, it's very unlikely to be a waxcap or waxcap grassland fungi. So thinking about the ID features that we've discussed so far today, which waxcap do you think this one is here? Do you think it's a golden waxcap, orange waxcap, or a blackening waxcap? So although the cap is orangey yellow in color, it is darkening towards the tip of the cap, which helps us to identify this as a blackening waxcap. So our last question of the quiz, which waxcap do you think this one is? Is it a pink gill, a ballerina waxcap, or a meadow waxcap? So with its pink conical shaped cap that's turned upwards, this is a ballerina waxcap. I would think this is possibly quite an old specimen based on just how upturned that has become. So well done everyone that took part in that. Hope you got on okay with those. So if you'd like to find out more about waxcap identification, we've got some useful resources here with ID books and also a couple of links as well. The session is being recorded, so if you don't get a chance to make a note of these, you can always come back to them later. In the Cairngorms, we're also in the process of developing an online learning module all about waxcaps, identification and management. So I'll show you a quick screen share to give you a taster of what's to come with that. Now, hopefully everyone can see that. So this is very much a work in progress at the moment, but we hope to have a number of interactive modules to work through within this. And these will include things like interactive images, videos, drag and drop quizzes, much like today, and useful tips and pointers, all made so that you can work through them in your own time and come back to them time and time again. So this is just a quick example of some of the pages we've made up so far. So we're hoping to have this launched in later in autumn. So if you'd like to keep up to date with when that's coming out, you can sign up to our Scotland e-news, which is where we'll be sharing when it's launched. For now, though, I'm going to hand you over to Plant Life Cymru's Magnificent Meadows Conservation Officer, Lucia, to talk about spotting waxcaps in the field this autumn. And I'll leave you with an image of my very first waxcap find of the season, which was a blackening waxcap. So thank you very much, everyone.
That was absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much, Kaylee. And the coral club and spindles, I think, are particularly beautiful. And I'm definitely going to be hunting the violet coral. It looks absolutely gorgeous. So next, we've got Lucia, who will be talking you through the Waxcap app and various other things. So I shall hand you over. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just trying to make the slide move. It's not doing anything, so Kaylee, you might need to move it for me.
2 seconds. Let's see if I can move that. Oops. Right, is that working for you, Lucia?
Yeah, it might be working out from both ends, I think. Okay, hi everyone. I'm the Conservation Officer for Magnificent Meadows, Wales. And it's a 3-year project funded by the Welsh Government. And as the name suggests, it's all about creating wildflower meadows and grasslands, working on all sorts of different scales, from schools and hospitals to large national scale restorations. And we are interested in waxcaps because they are a really important part of our grasslands and meadows. So once the flowers stop flowering in the summer season, then the waxcaps take over in the autumn, and they can often be found in the same places, in the same habitats. As Kaylee said, Waxcap grasslands are a rare habitat. In fact, it's so rare that we don't actually have distribution maps of them. It's not as straightforward as, say, coniferous woodland, because Waxcap grassland can be all sorts of different things. We do know, though, that it's principally found in Europe, and UK is one of the world's strongholds. We can say this from a distribution of individual species, like this splendid Waxcap, for example. You can see the red list distribution in Europe, around 2,500 records. And we know that this actually has 760 records are from the UK. So almost 1/4 of the species found in the UK, and this is the case for lots of other Waxcap species. So we really should be proud of what we've got and try and protect it. But talking about habitat mapping, we were really kind of thinking about how can we find a closer answer, how can we try and map these better. And this is how our new Waxcap app was created. This is a citizen science survey, so can be used by anyone. You can also find it under Waxcap Watch name. It started last year in September, so we are running the second season this year between September and January. And as I said, it was really designed with a view so it can be used by everyone. You don't need to have any previous identification skills or know very much about fungi. You will kind of learn about them as you use the app as well. So the idea is to really get people out there, search for fungi, get to know them, learn a bit more about them, raise awareness about this really rare Waxcap grassland habitat that we've got. And at the same time, with all of your help, really collect data about sites where they can be found and find out a bit more. So you can download it from, if you just look for it under Waxcap, you are not going to find it in your stores. So you first need to download the ArcGIS Survey 123 app. It's for free, and this kind of works almost as like a platform, as a holder for lots of different surveys. So you first download that, and then you can download individual surveys. You can see that on my app, I've got a couple of different surveys there. I've got a Great British Wildflower Hunt and our Waxcap. So this is just a kind of platform holder. The easiest way to download the specific survey is then on your phone, open our Waxcap Watch website and click the link that it tells you to click, and then you will just get the individual survey downloaded. Once you're on the website, please do have a look around, scan through, because it has some really good information about Waxcaps, about places where you can go and when to go and survey. So finding your site, you might have a think about which of these you might have around your house, either locally or a bit further. One of the top sites, really, and places where to find Waxcaps is cemeteries. So this might be quite an unusual thing for people to hear, but really cemeteries, if you think about them from the kind of land use point of view, they really are like a hidden protected havens in between all the busyness, because they would have been there for hundreds of years, some of them protected from development. They wouldn't have been plowed or seeded or used in any other agricultural way. So really our cemeteries, if they are also managed in an appropriate way, they can be really incredible. Some of them can be as diverse as nature reserves. Similar with roadside villages, these often can be the kind of remnants of our old meadows. And again, if councils are managing them in a sympathetic way, not cutting them too much, say, or collecting their offcuts, there is a good chance you might find some Waxcaps there. And then places like pastures and meadows, especially pastures that are grazed by sheep, because Waxcaps really like the sward quite short, and lawns as well, especially the ones that are the kind of stately home lawns, which again, like cemeteries, would have been there for years and years and wouldn't have been disturbed and fertilized. So this is just a selection of sizes you might have a go at. When to go and survey? This is a slightly more complex question with Waxcaps. If you think about wildflowers, when you get to the field or your meadow, even if you are out of the season, you still might be able to say what's there just from looking at the leaves, even if the flowers are not in flower. With waxcaps, it's a bit more complicated because you can only see them when they are actually fruiting, and that can sometimes take a week or a few days. So they have quite a broad fruiting season. You've got some of them that come up quite early in the season, as early as July, for example, like some of the citrine waxcaps. Then you have some late fruiting species that come up later towards the winter. And then you have the ones that are the kind of consistent throughout the season, like our blackening waxcap that Kelly already mentioned. It does start really early, but then you can find it consistently throughout the season until the very late. And then we kind of have the rest, where sometimes they come early, sometimes late, but they also tend to concentrate into the mid-season. So the best time when to go and survey and use the app would be now, really. The season has fully started. October, November is a really good core time when you can go and see them. And this is when you might see the biggest diversity on one side. You can also survey a bit earlier and later, that's totally fine. Please do go outside these times as well. And also if you can, if you've got time and the capacity, if you can visit your site even multiple times throughout the season, that would be really amazing, because then we can really build the picture of all the species that appear on the site. Once you're in your field, you can open the app. It's best to use in a field. There is a desktop version as well, but there will be lots of questions there that you might want to do in a field. It's a bit easier. The app is fully functional in Welsh as well. Once you're in a field, if you can turn your location on, then your site will be mapped and will be automatically added to our interactive map at the end. First part of the app is all about site information and your area where you are surveying. Some of these questions might seem a bit strange or maybe a bit random. Why are we asking about moss? Why are we asking about scrub when this is an app about fungi? But really knowing about the habitat, what state it is, and just finding out a bit more what waxcaps like is super important. So if you like to know more about why we are asking some of these questions, you can click the small light bulb sign by them, and a window will pop up explaining a bit more about the background of these. So I'll just explain, for example, about scrub. As Kaylee mentioned, scrub encroachment can be one of the really big factors in losing some of these sites. Lots of the sites are actually lost due to being abandoned or being undermanaged, would we say. This means that maybe they are not being grazed anymore, they are not being cut anymore, and this means that slowly they will start getting very overgrown with first thick long grasses, then there will be brambles and scrub coming, and eventually this might turn into woodland, which for our waxcaps and similarly for our wildflowers, that could basically mean that we are losing this habitat completely forever. Similar with clippings, and this applies to your lawns as well. If you want a bit more diversity, once you mow your lawn, it's a really good idea to actually collect those clippings, because if you leave them there, they will decompose and bring more nutrients into the soil, which in turn is going to encourage species that are nutrient loving, which is more grass, more nettles, more thistles. And waxcaps and fungi, similarly, again, like wildflowers, have then problems competing with these species. So this is why we are really trying to find out about the sites. And then we are onto our fungi section of the app. We are only asking about color of the fungi, so you do not need to know anything. You do not need to know the species name. We are only asking you to tell us the color groups that you can find. So our waxcaps were grouped for this app into their group categories, and also each group has been assigned a score, and this was done by rarity and diversity of the species. So by the end of the page, once you tell us exactly what colors you can see walking through your site, you will get a score for your site generated, and this is what we call site potential score. So if you've got a really high score, I think it's something above 20, that falls into high site potential score category, and this means that you are already standing in really incredible waxcap grassland habitat, which means that there is probably a huge diversity of species there already, which is great news. Then the site scores can also go into medium and low. So this is where all the results can be found. The website is functioning at the moment as well. So if you type in Waxcap survey results, you can see all the results and surveys that we received last year and this year as well. Some of the new ones are popping up for this year. We are also asking you to take a couple of pictures as you're going through the site information of the whole representative of the whole area and also of the sward. And you can see them there on the left-hand side. So we've got some lovely pictures there from all sorts of different sites. And for the public sites, we will be also putting the names of the sites there. So this map can also be used as an inspiration. So if you would like to go and see waxcaps and find sites that might have waxcap species on them, you can also use the map in this way. And the colors of the dots can tell you about the site potential score that I mentioned. So we've got low, moderate, and high. If you would like to find out a bit more about the individual species, you can download this leaflet. I think Cassie is going to put the link in for you as well into the chat. This leaflet, this is actually what the whole app was based on. So it has the same color groups there. So it's really useful if you are a bit unsure about what category you might have found. You can have a look at this leaflet. You can download it as PDF into your phone. It also has a few more examples of different species within the color groups, and also information about some specific species, how to identify them. So if you are interested in the actual identification, it's a really great resource. There is also a Facebook group that we created last year when we started the survey. It's called Waxcap Watch. And if you would like to share any of your beautiful Waxcap finds, please do join the group and show us what you found. And also at the same time, if you would like to get any of them identified, you might be lucky. There are a few experts on the group already that joined and might be able to identify them for you, which is really, really great and really nice of them. So just a few slides about results from Wales from last season. So you can see all the beautiful dots scattered there, which is really great. We had 199 records, surveys coming in last year, which I think is really great for the first season. This came from 81 individual users, and this is because some users were super keen and really so helpful. We had one person sending in 51 separate surveys, and this was across the same sites, but also that person surveyed lots of different sites. So that's really amazing. We are thinking about maybe doing a bit of a competition this year. So if you want a bit of an incentive, if you survey lots of different sites, there might be a small prize at the end of the season. We had 18 counties participating out of 22. Which is really great, but at the same time we can also see some gaps in the map, so it would be maybe an option for us to try and really fill in these over the next years. And lastly, the small graph shows you the site potential score that I mentioned before. We had 51 sites that scored high, which is already pretty amazing. So a quarter of the sites we know that were really good for waxcaps, which is good. And then the most of the sites were moderate site potential score, which kind of from the conservation point of view, it's in a sense almost maybe even more important or interesting to us, because with the right management on the sites, they have a real potential to really jump up into the high site potential score category. And at the same time, it also could be that maybe they haven't been surveyed throughout the whole season. So if we do manage to get out there and survey them throughout the season, maybe some of these actually will be popping up into the high category. In terms of habitat surveyed, we had 8 different categories, and the habitat that was surveyed the most by people was grassland, which I guess is not so surprising. We had, because this comprises a few different habitat types. We would have like hay meadows there, but this could also be things like pastures. raised by sheep or cow or any other kind of agricultural fields that you might have found. Really popular sites where people were going were cemeteries, and these were coming up with really great results. Then we had some lawns and verges. And then some of the other categories that might give you some ideas where to go is also amenity grassland. This could be parks, but also things like sporting fields. Sometimes golf courses actually can be really amazing for waxcaps. And then you might have some slightly more specialized habitats that also have specialist waxcap species on them, like some coastland heathland areas. In terms of what fungi color groups were surveyed, this is the results. So we had the yellows and the whites were scoring really high, and then on the other hand we've got the violet coral and earth thanks, which again was quite expected. So violet coral is super rare. We I think had only one record, and this side was also already known. This is actually a protected species, and earth thanks again with some of the other coral species are quite rare, so they are scoring quite low on the findings. And then on the other hand, we've got the yellows and whites, which have a few species within each category, but also once they appear, they tend to appear in really big clumps. So they're quite easy to pick out for people. And also the color of them being yellow and white, again, just pops up in the grass. So it's quite easy to spot them. What was perhaps a bit more surprising were these couple of groups with the orange turning black, which is, that only has one species in it, which is the blackening waxcap that Kaylee mentioned. This was quite surprising because this is actually the commonest species of waxcap we've got. It also is not as fussy as some of the other ones, so it doesn't necessarily need just purely unfertilized land. It apparently turns up in people's flower pots as well, and also can be found throughout the whole season. But what we think it is why they are scoring so low is because when they do appear, they tend to appear quite singly, and they don't last for very long. So they are not as easy to pick out in the bigger site. And also they can slightly change color throughout their life. So maybe in those early stages, some of them might be being identified as orange. And a similar case with the parrot waxcaps, the beautiful green ones here. They are very common. But what we think again is that because they're green, they're actually quite hard to find in a grassland. So they might be scoring a bit lower than what we were imagining. I just quickly mentioned those two species. So this might be the two that you might want to just keep an eye out on and have a bit of a closer look, because these two can be a bit trickier to identify because they do change color throughout their life. So the blackening waxcap you can see is really bright orange at the beginning, and then it turns a bit more black, and then it can go very black, which I love the picture. It's so kind of cool and spooky. But because of that, it can maybe misidentified as orange. But a really good way of making sure is if you just pinch it slightly or bruise it, then it will turn black as well. So that's a good way to find out. With parrot waxcaps, again, when they are really young, you can see they are very bright green, but the greenness fades. It can actually get washed out as well with water. And then you can see as they go through their life, they can change into all sorts of different colors of rainbow, from yellow to almost purple. But one good pointer is if you look at the very tip of the stem, there will always be some green. And just a couple of last slides, I would like to give a special shout out to our pink ballerina. This is kind of like our mascot, I guess, for this year. We are really trying to get people looking out for these. And this is because they are really amazing indicators of really good quality grassland. So by finding these, you really will help us map these special grassland sites. And also you can see from the distribution map, there's lots of dots in the UK. So it's very important species for us in the UK. And it's an important species on a European scale. It's also classed as vulnerable. So we really would like to find out more about it to be able to protect it. And also it's one that is really easy to identify. So it's not easily mistaken with other species. So it's you can go out and look for it and be sure that that's the one you see. What was really interesting is we were in contact with natural resources well, going through our data last year. And this is one of the reasons why we also picked pink ballerina. So we overlaid our data, and from the 41 sites that we received surveys for last year, actually only 2 of these were known by natural resources wells, which we were pretty shocked by. I mean, positively shocked, because this is really showing that the survey and the app is really bringing some amazing results. We are finding new sites that were not known by scientists. And if we are finding new sites for charismatic species like pink ballerinas, then it's very likely there'll be lots of new other sites from the data we haven't gone through in detail. We know that, for example, for lots of the rats as well, this is the case, that natural resources wells didn't know about these sites. So it's really amazing work. And thank you so much for everyone that took part last year. So what natural resources wells now are looking into, this is going to be the case for more of the public sites. They might be able to create the kind of mapping layer on their system, where if pink ballerina pops up somewhere on a public site, they might be able to advise the landowners not to plant trees on it, because this could be detrimental to this habitat. So based on this, we added a new feature into the app, and if you click yes for pink ballerina color group in your fungi page, then another small window pops up where you can take a picture of us for us of it, which is really important, because that means that we can really make sure, and we've got a proof now, that those pink ballerinas are on those sides, rather than just having yes and no answer. So just to wrap it up, so why do we and Waxcap need our help? Various different reasons, because they're also a bit more unpopular, and really sad to say, in comparison to, for example, birds and butterflies, often overlooked. We've got lack of fungi experts, so anyone that we can get on board and get interested in fungi is that's an amazing plus for this group, because they are becoming really rare and threatened. Out of these 50 species that we've got of grassland fungi, almost 40% of these are classed vulnerable. And this is actually a big deal. Vulnerable means that it's actually in a threat of becoming extinct in the wild. So that's a really, really horrible statistic. So really trying to do anything to avoid this is amazing. And the habitat is really disappearing. 90% of Waxcap habitat has been lost, very similar numbers for wildflower meadows. So if you can please use our app and share it and get us some of this really crucial data that we might be able to use and locate some of these sites, that would be really amazing. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.
Thank you so much, Lucia. And I think everyone agreed that's an absolutely fascinating talk. And the more I learn about Waxcaps, the more charismatic I think they are. They're wonderful. But the important thing is recording them, because without records, we can't protect sites. So download the app and get recording. So next we have Bruce. Thank you ever so much, Bruce. Over to you.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm from the National Botanic Garden of Wales, and I just want to give you just a few slides to tell you about how we actually manage waxcaps in Wales. At the National Botanic Garden of Wales, it's a site of 568 acres. So think of an acre as the size of a football pitch. And on that area, we have 25 different waxcap species. And we also have another 15 or 16 other grassland fungi associated with waxcaps. So it's an amazingly diverse area. And from this map, you can see where we are in West Wales. We're kind of down in the south. And I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing to here, but the whole site is mainly on the right-hand side of all these lakes areas where our waxcaps grow on pastures and hay meadows. And if you can see that lovely sort of red fungus down there, that's the splendid waxcap. That's what Lucia mentioned earlier, that Britain has around probably a quarter of all the splendid waxcaps in Europe. And we have wonderful splendid waxcaps at the Botanic Garden of Wales. So let's try the next slide. Now, we're an organic working farm, and this is one of the reasons I think we have such a great amount of waxcap fungi. On the right-hand side here, we have a fibrous waxcap, and this is one of 10 waxcap species we have on just one field, which is on the IUCN International Red List of Threatened Species. And we have 10 waxcap species just on one of our fields. And these all have the same conservation status of vulnerable to extinction as the likes of the polar bear, European bison, the snow leopard, the orangutan in Sumatra. I mean, you can imagine all them together on one field, and that suddenly makes you think, wow, this is a really important place. So we have a real responsibility for looking after these very much rare and endangered species. And last year during COVID, I was wandering around the site, and I found, you see this bag on the left-hand side, it's a supergrass. This is a bag of fertilizer, which was must have been applied by a farmer in the 1990s. And we have a map where the farmer wrote down where he applied his fertilizer. And this is now 2021, and we can still see where he applied his fertilizer, virtually no waxcaps. Where he didn't apply the fertilizer, that's where we're seeing a lot of waxcaps. The effect of fertilizer on waxcap fungi is massive. Some of them can take decades to establish. So on the next slide here, I can show you how we're actually trying to manage our waxcaps, and we're doing it with sheep. And we're doing it with, at the moment, a local breed of Carmarthenshire sheep called Balwins. Now, these are a really wild type of sheep. They're really hard to control. They're very, very single-minded. But what's really good about them is that they are adapted to local conditions, but they're a very nimble-footed sheep, because one of the big issues with things like waxcaps is trampling. So if you get lots of people walking around a place, maybe a really good waxcap lawn, maybe, too many people walk on it, you can actually compact the soil, and you can stop the waxcaps from actually fruiting. And if they can't fruit, eventually they'll disappear because they can't spread the spores. So we have this wonderful flock of 60 sheep, which we put in this one particular meadow, which we call Kai Waxcap. And so they're busy munching away, doing active conservation, and we're a visitor attraction as well, so people can come and have a look at these really wonderful sheep. And on the right-hand side here, you can see 3 other species, typical species that we get there. These are all one's the scarlet waxcap at the bottom here, that's also on the IUCN red list. And the top one is called Hydrocybe Genus, that's also on the list. But we also have these lovely yellow ones, which aren't on the list, but as Lucy was saying before, you get yellow waxcaps are very obvious to a lot of people. But you can see how lovely these are. So when people actually come and see them, most people really bowled over by them. So on the next slide, my slides are a bit slow and moving. Apart from having areas where we graze with sheep, we also have species-rich hay meadows at the Botanic Garden. So we have meadows which are full of orchids, and we've been managing them as traditional hay meadows for some of them for over 20 years now. And we're seeing every year, year on year, more and more waxcaps appearing on these meadows. Now, I'm not 100% sure whether or not that was because they were already there or whether or not they're spreading onto the meadows. But these are actually wonderful habitats because we have very short grass. We cut them in late August. So the grass is very, very short. Again, they're organic. They don't have much trampling on them at all. And so last year, again, just during COVID, I went on there and I saw a spectacular amount of pink ballerina waxcaps. Never seen so many before. Don't know why I've never seen them. But again, this is one of the pleasures of waxcaps. You just don't know what you're going to see. And also on the same hay meadows, we've had these spindles come up, these yellow, wonderful yellow grassland fungi. And at the bottom here, on the bottom right, these are out right now. These are another one of the IUCN red list threatened species. These are a lilac pink gill. So we introduced you to pink gills before. And on one of our hay meadows, we have a large fairy ring of these. Now, a large fairy ring suggests that these pink gills have been there for a very long time because they spread. The fairy ring grows very, very slowly. So we know that they've probably been there for a very long time. They don't always show. This is the other thing as well. So you can't be guaranteed to see them, but it's our job to manage them. So by saying organic, being careful about trampling, grazing with special sheep, keeping our hay meadows regularly cut every year. This really seems to be helping our wax caps, and they are spreading across the site. Last year I found wax caps, a load of splendid wax caps in a field. I'd never seen them before, and that's because we had overgrazed one of the fields, and so we reduced the trampling layers, and all of a sudden all these red wax caps came out. Absolutely wonderful. So the final slide is a cemetery. That's not. This is not the Botanic Garden, but oh, sorry, go back again. There's a gravestone. See that black gravestone there? This cemetery is in Carmarthenshire. Hardly any wax caps in the whole cemetery. But in front of that gravestone, in front of there, I found these earth tongs on the right-hand side. I found these blackening wax caps that we've seen before, and I found a whole load of other wax caps, all in front only of that gravestone. And I spoke to local people there, and it's because there's a woman buried there. It's from 1920, and for decades her husband came and not only cut the grass from around there, but he took away the arisings. Whereas the rest of the cemetery, people didn't take away the arisings, and that kept their fertility high, and they didn't get the same wax caps. So it just shows, just by simple things like cutting your grass, taking away the arisings, you too could have amazing wax caps. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Bruce. That was absolutely fascinating. And if you haven't visited the National Botanic Gardens of Wales, I urge you to do so because they are truly beautiful. We're now going to switch to some questions. We've got 5 minutes left, but I think we may extend that by 5. So if we say 10 minutes for questions, I'm just going to put us on gallery view so you can see everybody. And I think perhaps if we could stop sharing the screen so that everybody can see the panelists. I think maybe Kaylee, if you could stop sharing. There we go, lovely. Okay, so we've got quite a few questions, and I'll be as quick as I can with those so we can cover them all. Ray Delaney asked if it's possible to collect and spread the spores of wax caps.
Oh, can I answer that one?
Over to you, Bruce.
Yeah, you might have noticed some of the pictures in the presentations earlier were by a fellow called Ray Woods. He's one of the leading mycologists in Wales, and I know Ray really knows his wax caps. I know he's been trying for years to try and spread them and hasn't been able to. And all the other wax cap people I know can't do that. But so it's a bit of a dark art. No one really knows. But I have been told by Ray Woods that the spores of wax caps have been found in the flesh of different wildflowers, including things like ribwort plantain, and even in mistletoe. And that's really how. I mean, mistletoe's up a tree, you know, wax caps are down here. How's that happen? No idea. But as far as I can tell, no one really knows. I don't know about you, Kaylee or Lucia. No, it's about creating the conditions, though, isn't it? And again, like that gravestone at the end, I think if you have wax caps nearby, you create the right conditions. Wax caps maybe will find their way over, and it needs a good scientist to tell us how that happens.
Thank you so much, Bruce. We've got a question from Sue Hedge, and she asks what pH is best for wax caps, and does liming soil kill them off?
In terms of pH, you've got some. I don't think they are too fussy. They can appear on lots of different sides. I think they tend to be on neutral. But then we also have, similar to wildflowers, you would have some specialists that are found in calcareous grasslands, and then some specialists that are found in heathlands, for example, which often have the acidy soil. But in terms of whether liming kills them, I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't think so. I don't know whether you've got answers for it, Bruce, maybe from your management.
Yeah, well, we have fields where we know we have them in a field, like for instance, which is named Kai Calc. So in Welsh, that's kind of suggests that that field has been lined in the not too distant future, and we find waxcaps on there just as much as we find them on more neutral soils elsewhere. So I think I don't think the acidity is, as you say, Lucy, some are specialists, aren't they? And I think extremely acid places. Mind you, I've seen them on tops of mountains, you know, where it's really, really acid. So I don't think it's a massive issue. I think one of the again, we ran a UK Fungus Day event on Saturday, and we had again one of Wales's leading mycologists called Emma Williams with us, and she was saying wherever she finds waxcaps, nearly every time it's associated with feathery moss. So that's a really important thing to look out for. You can almost bounce your hand on the grass or jump up and down. If it feels a little bit springy, you're probably more likely to find waxcaps than if it's quite dead, or through compaction or the lack of feathery moss. So the feathery moss has got a wonderful name, and I can never quite remember it. But it's something like Rhytidididiv, and this is hard to say, Rhytidididelphus. Can you help me, Lucia, Kaylee?
I can't.
But that's the most common one that you find with it. It's great.
Fantastic, thank you, Bruce. And I've got another question about the soil. So does spreading farmyard manure on upland grazed by sheep, in particular in the Shropshire Hills, reduce the likelihood of finding waxcaps?
Well, I'd definitely say yes. I think I mean, when you get in all the places that we find them where they're grazed by sheep, obviously sheep poop, so you know they're used to that. But I think when you add manure onto your site, I think what you're doing is you're adding nitrogen and phosphorus to your soil. This is pretty much that reduces the role of having grassland fungi. So generally, I think it's bad for fungi to spread manure.
Thank you. Another question in particular about the app, and Stephanie asks, well, she says we've talked a lot about Wales, but does the Waxcap project cover records in England as well? And I'll say, and Scotland. Over to you, Lucia, perhaps?
Yeah, we did talk a lot about Wales just because we developed the app as part of our Welsh project. That's the only reason, really. But yes, it has been now expanded and it can be used everywhere. Anywhere you are in the country, please do use the app.
Excellent, thank you, Lucia. The best height, Ian Johnson asks, what is the best height of grass for waxcaps?
Well, from a human point of view, sometimes when I go out looking for them, the grass is long, I don't see very much. So again, it's one of those things. But again, if you think of yourself as a little mushroom and you are spending most of your life underneath the ground, and then it comes to autumn time and you have to put in lots and lots of effort to shove up a fruiting body, and that fruiting body would then disperse your spores. What you really don't want is to shove up your fruiting body and for all grass to be around you, so your spores can't be caught by the wind and dispersed. So I think practically we want to keep the grass relatively short to allow the fruiting heads to rise above them. And I think that the fungi might have to put in more effort if the grass is quite long to keep putting up bigger fruiting bodies. So really, the lower the better. Although I'm saying that only as I once did an experiment where I overgrazed a patch to try and reduce the grass length right down to nothing, and I put in loads and loads of sheep, my electric fencing area, and then I got absolutely no waxcaps whatsoever because they had over trampled the site. I felt like a right idiot, but I've learned from that. So lots of grazing, but not overgrazing.
I also just wanted to add that they can work hand in hand with wildflowers as well. So it's really important to keep it short when they are trying to fruit, which is often September, October, November. But that means that actually in the summer you can still have your hay meadow there with your wildflowers.
Yeah.
You do the cut in August, say, and then keep it short just before the fungi are starting to grow. That's the kind of ideal timing.
Thank you both. I've got time for a couple more questions. Sylvia O'Brien asks whether you'd prefer us to look for sites that are not already managed for wildlife.
Say that again, Cass. What was the question again? Sorry.
Would you prefer us to look at sites that are not already managed for wildlife?
Oh,
so I guess around, yeah, question for Lucia perhaps, around, I think all records are probably valid records. So
yeah, and Kaylee, did you want to add a bit more about how you will be using AB in Scotland?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess for us, we're trying to hone in on any grassland sites that we don't already know of. So really, you can do a survey anywhere. And in the Cairngorms, what that's going to do for us, we're hoping to look at those moderately rated areas that have the potential to be on the high ratings for grassland fungi, and visiting those sites and seeing what sort of management techniques can be used there, or if there is already techniques there, how that's affecting the fungi. So really, whether it's already managed or not, it's still really valuable to have those records so that we can make that overall assessment of these different areas in the Cairngorms. And of course, records can come in. I've seen there's a few questions about other areas in the UK, and you know, we're welcoming records from everywhere in the UK at the moment, but in particular, our projects will be picking up on specific data for us to use in the field.
Thank you, Kaylee. And just two questions now, I think. So Maggie, picking up what we were saying, Kaylee, Maggie wants to know about records and the likelihood of finding waxcaps in the overcultivated southeast. Does anybody have any experience in the southeast?
I don't, but I know, I mean, you know, looking at distribution maps, I looked at yours, Lucia, earlier, and for the splendid waxcap, there was hardly anything down there, was there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a tricky one because from what waxcaps like, they are unlikely to be found in, yeah, very heavily fertilized and cultivated land. But then still there might be some patches that we might not know about, like the sites that were, you know, turned up from last season that Natural Resources Wales didn't know about. So there's always a chance you'll find a patch somewhere, a cemetery, a roadside veg. You know, it's always good to try.
Maggie, I think that's your call to action. It's your mission over the next month to investigate that and find out. And do feedback to us, that would be great. And then one last question. It's two questions sort of put together, but it's about how we share the waxcap data. So I'm afraid I haven't made a note who asked the question, but do we share results with local record centres, and also do we share them with county recorders as well? So how's that information fed back out to other recorders?
It's a relatively young survey still, so we are still setting up all of these links as well as we go. We do work in Wales with Natural Resources Wales, so there is definitely big communication in there. With records, it's a bit tricky because this is not the record app. We are not a recording species, so in that case, in that sense, we can't really be sharing any species records with the recording centres. And I guess in the same way with the county recorders. Now this is the first year where we are actually including this option of people actually taking some of the pictures for us of the pink waxcap. So now we will have some of the proof. So this might change in the future. So for some of the groups, we might be able to work on more of a species level. But at the moment, it's just the color groups. And of course, the site information that can be freely shared. So we are very happy to share that with anyone. And also the maps are publicly available on the website, so anyone can have a look at them and see where the sites are.
Fabulous, thank you so much, Lucia. I think that's probably it for now. We're running a little bit over time, so apologies for that. But thank you so much to all our panelists. I found it fascinating, and it's a journey that I'm really enjoying going on, learning more and more about these fabulous waxcaps. Any sort of closing comments from anybody from the panel?
Just say, in Wales, it's a good year for ballerinas.
Woohoo.
And citrine waxcaps. I've been finding those in places I haven't been seeing them for years. So every year is different. So just keep on going out.
Wonderful, that's fantastic. So thank you ever so much, everybody. So use the app, share your photos, and get out and enjoy autumn and all it's got to offer. And thank you so very much, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.